Good afternoon. Welcome to our latest MaxContact webinar, Unlocking Contact Center Performance, MaxContact's 2024 Benchmark Insights. I'm Brooke Watson, the Senior Marketing Executive at MaxContact, and I'm your host for today. In this webinar, we'll be looking at the key data insights from our 2024 benchmark report, where we've interviewed 500 contact center leaders to pull out the key KPIs, trends, and strategies that are currently impacting the industry. So for this webinar particularly, we'll be focusing on the agent and team research found in our report. Today we're joined by Ben Booth and Chris Rainsforth. I'll pass over to you, Ben, first to give yourself a bit of an introduction, and then to Chris.
Hate my introduction. I'm Ben Booth. I'm the CEO of MaxContact's. That's all I got.
Chris.
Hi everyone, I'm Chris Rainsforth. I'm Director of Learning and Innovation at the Forum. If you don't know who we are, shame on you.
I'm nicking that.
We'll practice it for the next one.
Yeah.
Perfect. So we'll dive right in for today. So one of the first things that we are looking at in the benchmark report is the top performance metrics that were identified by the research. So the top metrics that came out from interviewing our contact center leaders were the top metrics that are being evaluated is average handle time, QA score, and the CSAT score. So they're the top metrics that sort of contact center leaders are looking for as identified in our research. So just to the panel, I'll go to Ben first. Why do you think the average handle time is tracked as identified in the research slightly more than quality and satisfaction? Do you think there's a risk of prioritizing speed over quality?
I had to answer this, and I've always thought this is a problem as a start. This isn't new. I've been doing 20 years now. Average handle time for me is a measurement and used for things like planning, workforce management, etc. But if you are focusing on your handle time with clients, there is usually a significant shift towards quality. And I've seen it in loads of places, because you, especially on inbound, because you're trying to get your SLAs on queue times down, and that's usually driven by handle time. But then how do you focus on repeat calls, why you got so many calls in the queue, etc. So I've always been against average handle time, and I'm against any, well, not inject, you can use it, but I'm against any stat in isolation, to be honest. So average handle time is a productivity metric typically seen in the contact centers, but not driving the other key metrics normally that contact centers focus on. So yeah, I've always been dead against it, even back in my early days. I don't know why it's still top. I don't know how many times everyone needs to say this should not be your top metric before it drops off the list. So it should be there. You should definitely look at it. It can help with training. These are the outcomes of training's high. Which agents handle certain interactions better. You can use it, but it shouldn't be the key focus.
Interesting. Chris, any additional thoughts?
I agree wholeheartedly in the sense that it's a diagnostic measure. So it's a diagnostic measure. It's telling us that something's happening, and we use it as a diagnostic measure because we're using it for things like budgeting and planning, right? So it's an assumption that we put in to our budget and our planning cycle to go, we think our interactions are going to take this long, and then we budget and plan accordingly to that, right? If then we're tracking either above or below that significantly, then that's a diagnostic. So that's telling us there's something wrong within the business. So it could be a people issue, could be a process issue, could be a system issue, could be anything, right? But it's telling us, it's pointing us to go, we've got a problem, let's go and investigate what that problem is. So if we just target that and we just measure people against that, it becomes counterintuitive, because actually what it's doing is impacting somewhere else down the line. So to Ben's point, it could be that your quality is suffering. It could be that your repeat calls are going up because we're not dealing with the customer correctly in the time that we've kind of put people on. So I think, yes, we need to keep an eye on it. I think as an operational metric, we shouldn't be focusing on it. It should be sitting in the background, just used as a diagnostic to say we think we need to focus somewhere to fix what's going on.
Interesting. So just to flip it back onto sort of what you said, I'll go back to Ben first. Ben, you've mentioned that this has been something that you've seen, in the contact center industry for years as one of the top metrics that people focus on. Why do you think it's still at the top of the list if you think it's less of a priority in terms of metrics to measure?
I think it's still the productivity. Contact centers, they're always seen as a cost center. And I think they still are. I think it's changing, especially now with all the data you can get out of what's happening with your clients. But it always came down to, we want to answer this amount of calls within this SLA, so we want to answer 80% of calls within 30 seconds, and we have this many staff. So the only way we can do that is if our average handle time is 1 minute 30. And that's what it was. It just became a formula, it became a measurement. And it stuck. It's the same with a lot of measurements in most industries. They stuck from where we started, and it has never evolved to where we are. It does need to change. Like I say, it is important. You've got certain staff that have got low, like say CSAT, but the handle time is high. Well, that tells you there's a problem there. But it's not in isolation. I don't know. I think it's not just us now. Everyone is against it being the top measurement. But I think it does come down to that. And I think it's staying strong because of the economy we're in at the moment, and productivity is being the focus. Again, back into contact centres, costs are higher, productivity, efficiencies. So you're looking at number of interactions we have a day, this many staff. In order for us to get through it, then we need to hit these key metrics. And it's come back up, I think, because of that.
Interesting. Anything else, Chris?
Yeah, I just think initially, Ben, I think there's a thing that it's an easy metric to measure, right? So it's one of the easiest things in terms of data that's available to us. If you think when we set up contact centers, when we started to think about this concept, we took it away from a kind of manufacturing kind of ideology of kind of, we need to be productive, we need to be accurate, we need to do things in the same way, we need to do whatever, right? So we took these methods. We then had technology that gave us really rudimentary data back in the time, right? So that was call handling length, the whole time. It was all the ACD metrics. That's all we really could get hold of data-wise. Yeah. So we kind of stuck that into our, this is what we need to do now. So this is the thing that we really easy. But as an industry, we've developed now where data is rich. We've got different things that can tell us better around how we're performing, how our people are performing, how our people are feeling, and how our customers are feeling. AHT again should just be that thing. I think it's just because it's something easy to do. It's an easy number that we can get, readily available, pretty much in real time all the time. So it's something easy for people to do. When we started in complexity, and that's where people revert back to ease sometimes.
Put a cost next to it on a spreadsheet as well.
Exactly.
And we know what our costs are. So you can't put a cost next to MPS and SAT. You can't. It's very hard to make. Whereas that's controllable, and people like what they can control, so it stays. It is a problem. Yeah,
makes sense. Chris, I'll go back to you for this one. So if we have less of a sort of reliance on tracking average handle time as the top statistic, what do you think we should be tracking metric-wise there? What do you think is one of the most important personally that leaders should be paying more attention to in 2024?
I think it comes down to what their goal is as a business, right? So when we speak to customers about this and we go, right, what's your strategy? So what are you actually trying to achieve as a business? So what do you want? What's your aspirations as an organization? So again, depending on your service offering and depending on your industry, people have different drivers for that. And then you just need to decide then what's the key thing that tell us we're heading towards that strategic goal. So if you want to be the #1 utility company in the UK, right, what things will tell you as a business that you're the best utility company? Does average handling time tell you the best utility company? No, it doesn't, right? Your customer retention does, things like that. So it's understanding what's relevant to what you're trying to deliver as a business. So once you understand that, you can then start to think, okay, so if that's our strategic intent, what's our customer measure? So what are we going to hang on? So don't have 5 or 6 different customer measures. Think of one that you're going to hang your hat on. So it could be an MPS, could be CSAT, could be whatever. Doesn't matter which one you choose, but that's your customer measure. And then understand then your people measure that links to that. So if your attrition's going mental, then you go, right, that's going to have potentially have an impact on our customer measure because we're constantly retraining new starters, right? So you can start to link all these things together, but it all starts with that strategic intent. So I don't think there's one key metric for every organization. It's the right metric for your business to drive your strategic intent.
Makes sense. Anything additional, Ben, on that one?
Yeah, I always say be honest. If some companies have to focus on operational efficiency, and if it is that, then that's what you've got to do. But don't say you're focusing on satisfaction when actually it's operational efficiency, because everyone needs that North Star goal, what you're aiming for, and everyone needs to be aligned. So if it is, look, it's costing too much, we're not getting this, then you've got problems in your contact center and you need to look at them and you shouldn't hide from them. But if it is, net retention, so retaining clients and growing as well, then I agree. Where does AHT actually fit in that calculation? Probably quite far down. So it's just being honest when we speak to a lot of clients, what it is you're trying to achieve as a business, and let's do that. And we can build the goals around it. What we tend to see is people, I don't know how to, they feel almost embarrassed to say, look, we need to save money. Look, if you need to save money to save jobs, you need to save money to save jobs. And that's fine. That's what we're focused on. That's the goal. If we need to focus, like you say, this is what we want to achieve, then your goals go around that goal. And it's almost to be feeling ashamed of what they're trying to do. So, decide what you want to do as a business. Let's set that North Star goal, and then we can focus on what matters to achieve it. And that will then be made up of everything that flows into that top goal. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, we're moving on from top metrics to top priorities. So within the research, it came out from our survey of 500 leaders that the top priorities for contact center leaders at the moment was providing great service, which was 47%, and ensuring team happiness. So 46.6% of people voted for this as the top priority as well. So these priorities outrank even compliance and sales. Ben, I'll go to your thoughts on this because you look like you've got something to say.
No, I'm just laughing at it. So they're the priorities of the business, and neither of them go to the stat you measuring. To the point we just made. Case in point. So I'll be honest. Look, attrition, and it leads into attrition. Team happiness is a factor into customer satisfaction. If you've got an unhappy team, you can have low satisfaction. So. And the outcomes, and I was going through this before, it's what is the main outcome? If it's customer satisfaction and team happiness, then why are we seeing the most? I think all the stats at the moment say customers are more unhappy than they've been before. It's going down. Pandemic was actually a peak. It's now dropping back off, and we're seeing higher attrition. So why, if they're the two highest priorities, what's the reason we're failing more? And these stats are no different. I go back to the basics since I started. What customers want, they want to be answered fast and get the first time resolution. That's it. That hasn't changed in 20 years. So how are we failing there? Are we training our staff right? We're going to get onto attrition, but I think it was something stupid like it's between 6 and 12% of staff quit in the first 2 weeks. How do we get those type of teams right? So if they're the two goals, again, we need to look at what's the reason. A lot of places are failing on them, and that again goes back to measuring what matters and actually putting things in place to say we're going to tackle this problem and focus on one at a time. I would say don't try and solve everything at once. You're not going to do it, and really drive that in the business, and then we can get everyone aligned from the top down, and we'll all drive into those same goals. But it did make me chuckle that the two priorities don't match the highest statistics we measure. Again, I always go back in our business, measure what matters.
Great, thanks, Chris. To you.
A big sigh from Ben. No, I don't disagree with what Ben's saying. I think it's interesting for me that I think, especially when it comes to things like benchmarking or discussion, I wonder sometimes do people are they just saying what they want, they think they should be saying, right? So they're going, right, the question here, actually, providing great service, that's what we're about. We're about providing great service, right? And I have to say that because that's what we should be saying because we want to be the number one in our industry. Similar with people, we're a people-centric business. That's what we've been telling everybody on LinkedIn for the last 10 years. So I can't then say that it's not a priority for us as a business. So I think some of it will be a bit clouded by that type of activity. But I think fundamentally that, to Ben's point, we're very simple. Contact centers are simple. When we break it down, there's some of its parts. It's a simple operation. We're dealing with customers, we're solving problems. That's it, right? So if we're going to provide great service, we need to make sure we've got the services, the processes, the systems that allow us to deliver that service. Bottom line, easiest thing to do, right? People get it wrong all the time. So we'll do that bit. What do we need to do? If we're selling something, we need to be able to make sure we can get it out of a warehouse, onto a truck, into someone's house, right? If those things we can't deal with, then we're failing as a business, right? So fix that bit. Make sure that we do what we say we're going to do, and do it as easy as possible. It's not difficult to make it work. We've just overcomplicated things. And now we're going, right, we need to provide service. Well, just do your job. I think sometimes there's a alignment to what we think customers want to what they actually want. I remember seeing someone speak about 10 years ago, right? And it always sat with me. It sat with me for a long time because she said at the time, when there's no such thing as great customer service. All it is doing what you say you're going to do. Right? Because actually, if you just do those simple things of doing what you say you're going to do, that to a customer is great service.
Yeah.
Right? So we get things wrong, that's when it becomes bad. So just do what you say you're going to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. In terms of the top priorities as well, having a look at compliance, which was 38% of people voted that as a top priority. With everything that's happening in the contact center industry at the moment, with what we're seeing with Ofcom regulations, does that worry you at all? Ben, I'll go to you first. Do you think more people should be paying more attention to compliance now, or what do you think around that statistic?
It's an interesting one. Because in a lot of sectors, compliance has changed recently. FCA did the new regs. Ofgem have made changes recently. So depending where you sit, depends how serious you're going to take that. I mean, if you're Ofgem have significant powers now over energy business due to having rescued some in the pandemic. So it is worrying, and a lot of the changes have been around consumer duty and vulnerability as an increase in treat people fairly. So that dropping down can be a challenge longer term. Like you say, solving this problem, but it's going to bite you in the bum further down the line, and that always costs more as well to the company. So it is a worry. It's a worry how many businesses are willing to take the risk, and there is businesses out there willing to take the risk because the cost of implementing the checks and balances to make sure it's being applied across the entire contact center over and above onboarding and some training is actually quite expensive. Which means people are having to make a choice. And the choice from those statistics is they're choosing to take the risk. So it is something that's worrying, especially depending what industry you're in. But I'm also not surprised by it right now. I think some businesses are having to take the risks, and it's tough at the moment. All businesses are going through pain. Inflation has been a serious challenge, and they're having to say, well, I'm willing to take the risk because I can't afford it now, and I still want a business in 12 months. And that is the macroeconomics that we're in at the moment. So I do feel for it as well.
Yeah, definitely. Anything additional, Chris?
Not really. I think the other side to it, it's a flip side to Ben's point. I think that there's been a lot of work done around compliance organisation, especially big organisations. If you're good at compliance, you're good at compliance, right? And if you've invested in it for a lot of years, like a lot of organisations have, it's been invested. Those changes, as long as they get on top of it, get ahead of the game, it ceases to be an operational problem because it's actually part and parcel of what they do day in, day out. So it becomes part of the fabric. So there's a lot of organisations that have got a really good handle on it that wouldn't necessarily as a priority because it's just BAU. Right.
Yeah.
So when you ask that question again, how you interpret the question might give some of that. Is it a priority for us? No, it's not, because we just do it. We've got the checks and balances in place. We've got the safety measures in place. We're doing what we need to do, and we can verify that we're doing that. So actually, it's not a priority. The thing that we're not getting right is making sure our customers are supported. So that becomes our priority because the compliance stuff's looking after itself over here. So I think there's a bit of that, but there's a bit, to Ben's point, depending on the organisation, size of your operation, things like that. There are some people willing to take the risk on these things, and hope that they don't fall, behind that behind those regulations. But yeah, it's an interesting one. But I think again, goes back to the first point of bed. I think some of it is what's the thing that I should be telling people that we're good about, while we're focusing on customers and people.
Yeah, definitely. And bringing it back to that as well, talking about compliance and obviously quality checks being a big thing that ties into sort of agents and that ongoing coaching and things like that. Ben, in terms of strategies that you think can improve, bringing it back to sort of agent happiness and customer service in general, what sort of strategies would you suggest to leaders to sort of, maximize that and grow that within their teams?
Well, coaching and feedback.
In terms of agent happiness and customer service, in terms of like boosting those priorities, what strategies would you tell contact center leaders to prioritize?
Again, I don't think it's really changed. I think we've gone a little bit backwards. There used to be quite good onboarding and continual feedback. I think the study showed 50% of contact centers are hybrid now. And I say this to a lot of people, it's a tough job. And hybrid isn't like me working from home. I've got 3 monitors. I'm sat in my own little room. Hybrid for a contact center is you sat at a kitchen table all day. Your onboardings used to be a 2-week introduction and induction where you got to meet people. Now you get sent a video. And this is what you need to watch before you're on the phones or whatever it is you're doing. So training and onboarding is a big thing. Feeling part of the business, understanding how you add value. And then all businesses, including contact centers, what motivates people and having some of those times. One thing that's been massively sacrificed with this push on AHT is a good example, and service levels, and we went through a recruitment crisis in the pandemic, which never really sorted itself fully out, is that all those initiatives for agent happiness that brings around motivation, team, etc., a lot of them have been sacrificed. How many contact centers, do team building exercises now, and we'll come off the phone and we'll do this, we'll do that, whatever it may be. A lot of them have been sacrificed. So I do feel it's gone backwards, and there was a big push in a lot of contact centers we used to work with, I've been involved with, where there was a progression plan if they wanted to take it. Not everyone took it, but it was there. It was, if you want to do learning in X, or you want to become a team leader, or you want to get into in the CC space now, analytics, QA, there's so many careers you can go into. There was almost a documented, formalized, this is how you do it. And knowing that was there was enough sometimes. Again, I think a lot of this has dropped off, and it's hard to communicate going hybrid. I'd love to meet some people who've got it absolutely spot on, but I'd say most of us are still learning. Where you're having to now over-communicate with people about these things, and it takes a lot more energy and effort in a time where everyone's busy and trying to do a lot more with less. So yeah, I do think it's gone a bit backwards. I do think those initiatives need to come back to the forefront. And yes, it is a lot of time, effort, and energy. But without it, I would say that's one of the bigger challenges and problems as well. So we do need to start doing it again.
Great, thanks. What about you, Chris?
I think it's an interesting one. I think the industry's changed, right, massively, and we all know that, right? We've seen it. Ben talked about there, the shift to hybrid, do whatever. I think what we've still not got right yet is really putting stake in the ground of what our operation's about and what our organisation's about. Going back to Ben's point about honesty around kind of what you try to deliver operationally, be honest with the people. Right? This is how we work, this is how we operate, and understand their challenges and understand their requirements to make it seamless. So if we're working hybrid, my experience should not be any different. If I'm working at home or working in the office, just shouldn't be. Right? I should have access to the same systems, same speeds, same amount of screens. If I go to the office, I've got 2 screens and a desktop computer that's running, a terabyte of data through it, right? Then I go home and I'm on a 16-inch laptop, 1 screen on a dial-up. Right, the experience I'm going to be able to deliver, the experience I'm going to have as an agent is completely different to my colleague that's sat in the office. So if we're doing these things, we need to make sure that whole thing is aligned, because that then allows us to focus on the things. So we can't then measure things in isolation anymore. We've got to measure things within that range that says these people have got these challenges. So we talk a lot about making sure we consider what we're doing and then just planning for that consideration. So if you decide to be a hybrid business, make sure you've got your business set up to deliver hybrid. So whether that's training, whether it's development, whether it's culture, whether it's feedback, right? You can't just do what you've always done in a face-to-face environment, hybrid, by just kind of sellotaping some bits together that might work over a Teams meeting. There's got to be something in it for people. We've got to understand that physical environment to Ben's point. If they're sat at home, are they the right person? So when you're recruiting for people and they're saying they're working from home, if you're not as a business prepared to provide them with what they need to have a quiet, safe environment within their home, then we shouldn't be bringing them into the business, because they won't last. That's going to drive your attrition problem, because they'll go, I can't deal with sitting at the kitchen table when the kids are off school. It's not going to work for me, right? So you've got to understand those challenges and then work within those challenges. Just don't react to the need to get people into your business to not be able to support them in the right way. If you are a fully office-based business, be honest with people from day one and say, look, we are office-based. That's what we expect. There's no home working, no hybrid, no nothing. Right? We've got too many people trying to be too many things to everybody, but actually end up being nothing to nobody. So we've got to get it right. And we're not taking into consideration the risks and the consequences. We just try to do things. When we just do things, we end up failing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that kind of naturally leads us on to the next statistic that the report found, which was that the average agent turnover rate is at 30.2%, on average. What do you think about that? I'll go back to you, Chris, first on that, since you were touching on the topic yourself.
I think it goes back to that. Sometimes we're not really clear with people through the onboarding process, or the onboarding process is poor. And, you know, we've done a load of work to Ben's point. If then what we're doing is focusing on productivity, we're giving people a lot of grief for very little reward, and they can go do it somewhere else with less stress, less hassle, and probably get paid the same or more. I think we have an issue in the industry of still a lot of organisations having it as low skilled work, or banding it as low skilled work, minimum wage, whatever it might be. I'm not saying that's a wrong thing, because we've all got budgets, we've all got to do that. But if we are going to do that, and we are going to measure it, or we've got to make sure we support people, because there's jobs out there now, you know, that will give same or similar, if not better, reward for very less responsibility. And that's where the challenge is. We've made contact centres complicated in terms of the customers that we deal with. You know, you've got to have something special about you nowadays to want to sit on the end of a 999 contact centre phone call. You've got to have something about you to sit there and just be shouted at by people all day, every day. Because typically what we've done, we've taken away the easy stuff. The easy stuff's gone, the transactional stuff's gone, and we're left with complex customers with complex problems that need solving, and we're giving people the lowest wage to do it. And that drives a problem.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else, Ben?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I also, you touched on a point there. When automation came in, or get rid of the easier problems, you got to remember, I used to do support, technical support. And when you get more senior, and every problem you get is only the hard problems, I'll tell you, those easy ones were good. I used to enjoy them because I could just get a win. So yeah, no, I do agree with that. And it is. I think there's a whole marketing around contact centres. Everything in the news is bad. When someone does a bad job, it gets plastered all over the news. It's a massive employment in the UK. I think direct and indirect, it's over 3% of employment in the UK, maybe higher. And I look at the skills we look for, and I mean, like the forum, forget our app and stuff like that. And it's, communication. One of the biggest challenges we have with people is how to communicate with people, because they haven't learned that skill. Empathy, in bags. Being honest with people, turning around, doing what they said they do, understand the commitment, and then they get into team real, working with other people, progressing them, coaching. They learn coaching quite early on in contact centres, another skill that everyone needs in modern workplace. So it's not just leaders and managers, everyone should be good at coaching. So there's massive skills there that you can learn, but everything in the industry is also, it's negative. All contact centres are going to be shut down and replaced by robots soon. Why would people want to enter the industry? It's seen as a part-time stopgap job. And the industry's got a bit of a challenge with it as a bit of a marketing, whereas actually the skills you can learn are great. And we've recruited people from the contact centre industry, book, still here, good staff that work their way through. And I know a lot of leaders that started off on the phone. So there's a bit of an image, and we do need to improve things. We need to remember it's a tough job. I've been doing this a while, and I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do that role. We've got some we've got suicide prevention lines in our customer base. You all listen to some of those. It is the superstars, and I think we need to get all these bits right. We need to treat them as people, and we need to start building up the careers they can have off the back, which is why I like the idea. Like I say, I always use it was a story with Tesco's had the example. They had this issue with people on tills. They didn't understand how they could ever get off the tills. And Tesco brought in a management training program. And they had 6 levels to the CEO, and they cut it down. So there's only ever 6 steps to becoming the CEO. And the difference that made in the business. And I use that story because the contact centre's got the same story. When people are on the phones, they just think they're stuck on the phones. No one cares about them. Doesn't matter what they do, they're not appreciated. And there's no path there. They don't know what skills they're actually learning. And for me, that all this needs to change. It is a tough job. It has got a lot more complex over the years, and I'm not just saying that. I used to listen to agents and call recordings. Go and sit next to an agent these days. They work at 100 miles an hour. It is amazing at how fast, how many screens and how many systems they are operating. It is crazy. And it is a tough job. It's not low skilled. If you have a problem, and you ring and you want help, you are getting in touch with a contact center, and they are going to solve that issue for you, no matter what it is. That's not a low skill job, no matter what it is. And I think we need to, it needs to get back to that, rather than it's just seeing we need to answer these calls and within X amount of time. It's not even solve the problem. We don't measure on solving problems. Yeah. It's just how many calls we need to answer in so many seconds and how long it takes to deal with a person to get on the next one. And this is where it all feeds in and needs to change. It's a great industry. I've loved the industry for a while.
I've been here 1996. I started. It's a long old poker, right? And yeah, but you know, but it's I think to your point, Ben, we've taken away the natural respite, right, that happened during the day. So you could go from I've just had a stinker, whatever that stinker is, I've just had a stinker, and then your next few calls are nice, easy transactional bits that you can naturally decompress and then go without kind of. And what we're finding is it's just constant now, constant difficult, to the point where people then get to a point where we're having to invest in things like well-being, freedom breaks, all that stuff that we've had to develop to support the fact that we've taken out natural respite, but then we're still putting pressure on back to the original point of AHT and things like that. And then we wonder why people go, I'm going to go work at Tesco, right, and get paid the same and do whatever. And actually, it's an easier ride because we don't sell the benefits. Publicly, the industry's seen as bad. Publicly, the industry's been seen as being replaced by other things. And for all that we can bang a drum about it, there needs to be a more national kind of perception shift around what's good about this industry, what roles are available, what skills you can develop, where you could end up, what career pathways are available to you, all those things, and we don't do a good enough job at.
Yeah, I think what you touched on with the more complex tasks for agents, it's interesting because being in a lot of AI topics, a lot of what you hear is, people talking about how AI will create super agents and what that impact will be and how it will help sort of agents to reduce mundane tasks. And we often talk about that side of it and how quickly it's developed. But one of the stats from the report is that 43% of contact center leaders have increased agent salaries, and that's on average 7% increase. So we're talking about how AI has sort of developed this role into a super agent. Maybe traditionally that type of a salary increase, in line with like inflation would be acceptable. But do you think nowadays we need to sort of reevaluate that with the sort of introduction of AI and how it's progressed those roles? What do you think about that salary increase? Like, should we be looking at higher salaries for agents now with the development of the role, and sort of what are your thoughts around that? I'll go back to you first, Chris.
I think that everybody should relook at their salary base just to understand the complexity of the role. I think you got into some places, role profiles haven't changed very much over the years, but actually what's expected of them has. And I think that bit needs readdressing. I think people increasing salaries is only a good thing. We want good people to come into the industry. We want to find people that are going to add value, and we want to find people that are going to make a career of it. We just have to. So I think the more we can make it attractive, the better. But salary is not the only thing that's going to drive people to stay in the industry. So it's a good start because, we're in a cost of living crisis. It's still ongoing. Everyone's been hit quite hard over the last few years, regardless of your circumstance. And I think, doing things like that helps. But back to what we've said before, is when you do that, you need to make the environment people work in as palatable. There's no point in paying someone, 10 grand over the going rate if actually they're working in a toxic environment that doesn't offer support, they don't get development, they don't get coaching, because regardless of the money, people will leave. So that whole kind of support system needs to work together to make it work for an organisation, to make it work for the industry. We'll only retain people if we make it compelling to retain them, and salary is only a bit of that. It's good to see the change. It's just too little too late in some cases.
Yeah, definitely. Ben, anything else from you?
It's tough just to say pay everyone more money. I'd love to pay everyone more money. The businesses are being strained as well at the moment. So, but again, you have to look at what else you can do. Training and development is what typically people who are doing that job are actually looking for. They're looking to start their careers or build on their careers. So I do think that's and the environment. You know, if you enjoy where you work and you're involved, and one of the biggest challenges in contract centres I always saw was I used to chat with agents, and they just didn't know how they made a difference or affected anything. They came in and logged in for 8 hours, but if you actually spoke to them about whatever the company goal is, they'll have a mission statement, etc. How are you contributing to that? And actually, they're the things over and above salary that we can focus on that drive, motivate, reduce attrition. Because money's great, everyone wants to earn more money, but it's actually not the highest up the list that will make a difference. And again, I think with the hybrid working and that lost sense of team. I mean, you used to walk into some contact centres back in the day when you had to install things on site, and I had to go to sites. You could tell good contact centres, the noise in them and the atmosphere was there. That's gone now. And we've not replaced it with anything. So you're coming in, you're putting your headset on, and what's an agent changing? You can go and get another job. Or I used to hear someone saying, now you just change the mug that you get given on your desk because you haven't got that sense of team, you haven't got connections, you're not creating business relationships, and all those activities have been sacrificed to productivity. So it's easy to, it's easy for anyone to sit and say increase wages, give them more time, but I'd focus on the ones that actually don't affect those things and they can make a difference and they can be implemented. So let's focus there first, and then we can add to it as we go.
It's just a constant evolution of the industry, and if we are being hybrid or remote, then we need to find the way that inspires people to work in that environment and create that camaraderie that we've lost a little bit. Now, the contact centres aren't the same. Whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, it's not for me to say. I think everyone will have a different kind of take on it, depending on their own personality and what they like and what they don't like. But we need to make sure we don't lose that connection with people. And that's one of the key things we talk about. How do we develop social connection within our teams, within our organisations when we don't see each other that often? What are the things that we need to do and make an effort to do? It becomes more of effort driven. So making sure we're doing something valuable as a team, valuable as a department, whatever it might be, every week, month, quarter. It doesn't matter what the cadence is, but we're putting some importance on that. I think there is always a risk of out of sight, out of mind, and we kind of can fall behind a little bit. But as an industry, I think we need to now not think back to going, what it used to be like, and try and replicate what it used to be like. So I think it's gone. That's gone, right? So what is the new state for contact centre? What do we actually start? So stop trying to do it in bits. Just be really intentful in what you're trying to do and build something that's going to work for the future and future generations that come through. Because if we keep harking to the past, we'll never move forward into what has become, a different environment to operate in when it comes to contact centres.
Okay, great. Thanks both. I'll just take the time as well to mention that if anyone has any questions from now, you can drop it into the Q&A and we will be going through some questions at the end. So just a reminder for that. Great. So I'll move on to our next sort of section here. And it's quite closely related to what we've been talking about, but more specifically from the agent perspective of a workload. So 42% of leaders reported increased agent workload, and that was on average an 11% increase from the year before. What do you sort of think about that in terms of agent workload? I know we talked about how AI is meant to be reducing some of those mundane tasks, but then we're still seeing that agent workload increase. So it's quite a telling statistic. Ben, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's definitely increased. Again, going back to the pandemic, we saw across our client base, interactions went up 30% and headcount went down 30%. So we had the staffing crisis and everyone, I was the same. All of a sudden, I was working from home. If I wanted to sort something out, I could just pick up the phone and do it. And things I was delayed. So you just get on top of things. So think about that. That's both sides. It never fully sorted itself out back to normal. This is the new normal. So I'm not surprised that workloads have gone up, and everyone's now it's the hype on AI is going to solve all the problems. Which is why marketing's jumping on that bandwagon, because they know it's the challenge in contact centers. So they're going to focus on the pain points, try and sell solutions to do it. And as we've said, yes, it can do that, but we're dealing with people at the end of the day. And I use myself as an example. If I've got something what I deem important to sort out, I want to speak to someone. And that's me. And I will bypass everything that you try and throw at me to speak to someone. So the workloads that have gone up, And we're trying to get agents to do more as well, because tasks have got more complicated. That's become the focal point. Contact centers have started moving to, so contact center systems have started moving to engagement platforms. So any engagement now is starting to run through contact centers, be it a problem, billing, sales, return, but even other things. And again, if you sit with agents, they're working on many different things now, cross-skilled, to try and improve that productivity. So I'm not surprised about it. Technology, I will say, can help. It definitely can. Software's been around a long time now, and it's proven to increase productivity. A lot of the things need to be, though, going back to the beginning, honest on what it is you're trying to achieve as a business, not what you think vendors like us want to hear. You know, it's nice saying we want to be all about people, where actually the ops director, etc., is more about the balance sheet. So what is it we're trying to achieve? Be honest with it. Technology can help. Training, speak to, again, it's common things you say all the time. Speak to the front agent staff. I mean, how many times it's everywhere in any business. They know what the problems are. So trying to guess what you think the issues are, and if you actually speak to people on the front line, they'll tell you what the issues are. And they typically, if you do it quite widespread, you'll work out what you need to do and what challenges you need to solve, which will actually help and impact the contact center. So help the agents rather than, you know, this is a common problem. It's most of our tickets. It's easy. We're going to automate it away. If you actually speak to the agents, that's not their problem. Their problem is going to things you've said. We've seen an increase in audio connection issues from working from home because the setup's rubbish. We've seen we don't know how to deal with this, and the escalation's an issue. And they're the problems that the agents will tell you, and they're not the ones people trying to fix. And it's using technology in the right places, but actually trying to solve the problems the users are seeing rather than what we think they are. So yeah, no, it's that's what I think we should be focusing on anyway.
Chris?
Yeah, I don't disagree. The other side to it as well is understanding, you know, so the people that are saying workload's increasing, what's happened to their head count? So what is the misbalance? Because you've got the same people saying they're having attrition issues and retention issues. So actually, is workload increasing per agent because there's less agents doing the work? So that's one question I'd like to kind of throw back out to the people that answered the survey. But the other bit as well is that we've made it that easy to contact us now. A lot of organisations are opening up different ways to do it. Customers have been a bit more savvy around how they do it and what they want. So naturally, we've invited more demand into our business by doing things that we've thought were the right thing to do for our customers. So if we invite more demand, then yeah, you know, funnily enough, we're going to see workload increase. So don't sit back and then moan about workload increasing when actually you've opened up your doors to more work. I think there's a bit of that sometimes where we forget about the consequence of the action that we take as a business, and then we see it as an issue. It's not an issue. It's what we've created and what we wanted. So let's deal with it. You know, if we plan correctly for it and we go, we're going to open up a new channel, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that, there's always going to be a reaction to it. I think sometimes we get surprised by the reaction and then we call it a problem. And it's not. It's just something we need to resolve. It's, you know, it's an interesting one. But yes, I think we can support people to deal with higher workload and just make sure, you know, we're doing the right things. If we do the right things by people when they work for us, it's fine. So people don't mind being busy. I honestly believe that when people come to work, they want to work right 9 times out of 10. You might get the odd procrastinator out there. You know, what we've done is take away those little bits of stuff that, you know, those little bits that just break up a day, right? I love admin because it means I can just chill out for like 20 minutes and, you know, send an invoice or do whatever, right? That's great, right? It's just that little bit of just doing something different. But I like being busy. I think people aren't bothered about being busy. I think people are bothered about not getting support when they're busy. And that's the bit we need to fix. So that's what drives your people leaving, your satisfaction. You know, you go back to that first thing, we're looking at employee satisfaction and making sure employee happiness. Right, okay, when work's busy, you need to support those people and not hang about to dry by giving them challenging metrics to meet like AHT. Taking off full circle, is that what I did there?
Yes, you did that.
Well done.
You know, it's not your first rodeo, is it?
We'll just end it there. No, just I think an interesting one that I've seen as well, especially for someone that's sort of like closer to the way they did things before was I think it was Klarna recently that had announced that they were getting rid of a lot of their agents in sort of replacement of a chatbot. And I think like you're right when you say, Ben, like absolutely there's things that a chatbot, especially in relation to Klarna, that can fix it really quickly, but you wonder what the long-term impact of that will be on the agents that they've left behind, because like you say, they're going to get more of the complex issues. And it's like, if businesses are implementing chatbots, are they implementing at the same time the processes to support those agents that they've left with the more complex issues? And I think just on that point as well, do you think, what sort of processes do you believe leaders should be prioritizing to support those agents that are in those complex positions? So not even just beyond technology, but talking about feedback loops, or what sort of some immediate strategies that leaders can put in place to counteract that? I'll go to Chris first on that one.
I think it's not difficult, right? I don't think it's difficult to think through. I think what you need to ensure is that go back to what we've said a few times, they've got the right systems in place to enable them to do what they need to do, and then the right support mechanisms in place to develop them if they need development, right? We do too much of kind of changing what we do as a business, changing a process, adding a product, whatever it needs to do, but then not kind of bringing it back to go, right, how can we support the person that deals with the fallout from that? The Klarna example is great. Yeah, it's doing the work of 700 people or whatever the stat was, right? I can't remember. It's something like that, wasn't it, right? Yeah. But there'll be a lot of fallout from that, right? So how are they dealing with that, right? Are they robbing Peter to pay Paul? So yes, you kind of, some of that stuff is that it's making balanced decisions to make sure we support the people that we need to do. Strategy-wise, just needs to add back to what we've talked about, making sure that there is clear kind of goal setting with the people that you're supporting. So if I'm a team leader, my team have got clear goals, and I've got a clear pathway that helps me support them. I've got the time and I've got the space and I've got the freedom to coach, develop, console, whatever I need to do, right, to make sure they're there. As we add complexity into it, make sure we're doing all the thinking first. We tend to sometimes react to a change rather than proactively plan for that change. And I think we need to do more of that stuff. As life gets more complex, as what we're delivering is more complex, we need to do more forward thinking to say, right, what are the consequences, more scenario modeling, all this type of stuff, all this what if analysis, right? We do a lot more of that now as an industry. What we're not doing enough of is then the next phase, which is the if then. So what if this happens? So if that happens, then what are we doing? And how am I going to make sure my people are prepared for it, supported for it, and doing that? So kind of take your analysis and your thinking beyond the what if and start to be that more predictive if then type thinking of how do we deal with the situations as they arise. And I think that allows then clarity for people, so they know where they stand, they know what happens in certain situations, and people know who they're supporting. I think if we leave it to chance, we kind of lose our way a little bit.
Definitely, yeah. Ben, anything to add?
Yeah, I have a bit of a thing with the Klarna one. It was interesting how they shut down, got rid of 700 staff when they also posted record losses. So I think it was good marketing.
There's some holes in it, Ben. I'm not going to lie. There is some holes.
You can put that one on me. There's a lot of marketing going around for redundancies at the moment. Kind of like we're going back to the office full time, and a lot of people are made redundant afterwards. So yeah, it's. When you start a job or you speak to people and you want to improve productivity, you've got basic questions. What system and tools can help you do your job better? How can I help you? The basics. Have you got the right? What's slowing you down? And what do we need to remove? What do we need to add? And it's still the same. I think there was a statistic still where 40+% of agents still don't have easy access to the information that they require to solve the problem because of permissions. Regulation is one, and some other things. But if we're not giving people the right tools, training, etc., that allow them to do their job well, and I go back to your busy point, no business in the world has ever said we have exactly the right number of staff to handle the work we've got today. Because you've either never got enough, which is usually the case, or you've got too many, which is even worse because you're getting rid of people. So people don't mind being busy, but they get frustrated when they can't do their job well. That's still, and that problem's not, again, we go back, has that been any different from 20 years ago? No. it's got more challenging because there's more systems, there's more technology, there's more software, etc., etc. But the basic things still apply. Have I got the right training? Can I access the right stuff? Can I do my job? And I think, again, we focus on those areas. A lot of the problems take care of itself. Still see it when I go into contact centers even today and speak to people and speak to agents. It's the frustrations they complain about. So how we can improve things are frustrations, not some of the things that we actually focus on. So again, I go back to speak to the front line. All the answers are there typically. And it's busy isn't the problem. If you have a busy day, use the word busy, and you've helped lots of people, I guarantee you, at the end of the day, you feel good.
Yeah, I think we've kind of, we're hiding behind technology as a solver for problems. It's always been there in some guys anyway, and I think, you know, fundamentally the contact center has not changed. You know, if you go back, I mean, and I'll challenge you all, right, to go and look back at futurologists from 10 years ago telling us what contact centers are going to be like in 10 years, right? There's a load out there that have done it. You'll find them on YouTube, right? Go listen to their talks from 10 years ago and tell me if they were stood in front of you now, it'd be any different, because it won't be. Right? The same challenges exist. They're just a different flavour today because we have solved some issues along the way. But when we solve issues along the way, new problems are created, but fundamentally they remain the same. How do we keep people happy? How do we keep customers happy? And how do we make sure technology is there to support what we're doing? Those three things have been around since I've started, and they'll continue to be around long after I've gone.
Great, thanks. We've got some additional questions here, so I'll get started with them because I am conscious of the time. Interesting question, actually. In terms of coaching and training, we talk about, you know, the importance of this with agents and giving them feedback in terms of boosting their skills as well as customer experience. Can it be a slippery slope, do you think? Do we run the risk of sort of overkill with coaching? Does that potentially impact, you know, agent happiness in the long run if we're micromanaging people? What do you think is the sort of cut off in terms of how much feedback we should be giving agents and making sure that it's always productive and not sort of counterintuitive in terms of their overall happiness? Ben, I'll go to you first on this one.
Yeah, any business coaching's coaching. It's continual. If every time I spoke to you, Buck, I gave you feedback on the way you communicated, eventually it get really annoying. If I gave you coaching training on what you're doing well, areas I think you can improve, and then work on it with you, that I don't think that ever gets boring or annoying. But if I was picking up on every single call and every nuance, because one of the issues with coaching and QA actually is, you know, you could do 400 great calls today, and QA tools are built to highlight the problems now, especially through speech analytics. So they don't take it in context of all the stuff you've done. And what will happen is they'll pick up and get alerted to the problem interactions you've had and not take it into context of everything else that's happened. And that's also getting lost in contact centers. And then you sat there thinking, all right, I did that on one call. What about the other 399 where I did a great job? And that's what you focused on. And it can be deflating, the coaching. So it has to be coaching how to say this, what coaching's meant to be. It's meant to be focusing on areas of improvement that can build you up, progress you, give you new skills, not that you messed up once. I mean, if it's a big mess up, yeah, you say, look, that was a mess up, you need to not do that again, whatever it is. But coaching needs to go back to being coaching. QA tools, especially now with all the analytics and everything that's come out, they're great, and they are great. You can get through a lot of, you know, you can listen to 100% of the call recordings, etc. But you do need to focus on the agent and what coaching and training they need over and above what one or two interactions are telling you. And it's things like that where micromanaging becomes a problem. There's others, but go to what coaching actually is for the user.
Great, thanks, Chris. Anything to add?
Yeah, just a little bit, and make sure it is really individual. You will have people on your team that are complete sponge, right? And they want the feedback, they want the information, they want to get better, right? They've got it in their mindset that this is a career for them, and they want to progress, right? So you have people on your team that want more, right, than somebody else. You know, there'll be people on your team that are happy just to go on, they'll come in, do a really good job every day. They have no aspiration to move up a ladder or to change role or whatever. So we need to understand who our people are, and then we tailor their development for them. You know, I think when I go into place, they go, you need to do X per person per week. And I go, no, you don't. You need to do what's right for that person, right? Because what's right for that person will be very different to somebody else. And that's the key to unlocking coaching and development for people. Make sure it's relevant to them. It's when they want it, when they need it, rather than just sheep dipping people through some kind of coaching program, because none of that will work. So to answer the question is there's no right or wrong answer to it. You do what's right for the individual that you're developing.
Okay, great. Another one on sort of agent performance. What do you recommend is the best sort of way to get intel on sort of agent performance, especially bringing into consideration that we're, working in a hybrid world, really? What would you say to a contact center leader is the best way to get a grip on your sort of agent's performance? Ben, I'll go back to you on this one.
I'm thinking it is a tough one overall. I mean, it does depend what you do. You do need leading indicators, so you do need some metrics. So whenever I look at anything, you need the leading indicators that give you areas you need to look at. So you do need some good ones. Again, HHC isn't a bad one for that with others. You do need to look at it. You get it where, let's say Chris is spending 25 minutes on every single call, no matter what it is. He might have great NPS and CSAT, but he's actually not productive as he's just chatting about the news and weather for too long. Versus someone whose their primary focus is to get you off the call, be polite. I was in a doctor's the other day with my wife, and the doctor was dead polite, but he was just placating. He was, yeah, I understand. Yeah, yeah, that must be really bad for you. Oh, didn't actually do anything. You do need to find the problems, and they're sometimes quite hard to find. So you do need, what is it? Again, I go back to the North Star. What's your North Star? And then build up some metrics that get you to that North Star. Then they should highlight areas of focus you need to do in the contact center. And then you just keep dropping down. I used to drop down all the way through to then listening to some calls. Actually listening to some calls. I know it's time consuming. Nothing is still better than actually then getting your hands dirty and listening to some calls from the agents to find out what the problems are. But you need to be able to, where you're focusing on the good and bad. And don't just focus on the bad. You do need to go for the good, because then you realize what works. So then, listen, you need to do it side by side. Get your North Star goal, build up your key metrics that feed up to that allow you to areas you need to focus. And you will have to eventually potentially drop down to some old school monitoring. If that still takes place, I don't know if it does anymore. I used to love sitting there just monitoring certain people to work out what was actually going on and what the problems were. I don't know if that's too old school these days.
Chris, anything else?
No, I think less is more, right? So to Ben's point a little bit, less is more, right? We all know that targets drive behaviours, right? We've said this for years and years, right? So set the wrong target, it'll drive the wrong behaviour, right? So we need to make sure whatever we're driving. We did a study, or there's been a study done, I remember reading about years ago, right? That I think, there's a neurological science had told us that the human brain is incapable of focusing on two things at once, right? Just is, right? So we tell an agent, you've got these 10 KPIs in a day, they can only focus on one or the other, right? Literally, be like that. So that's where you end up getting this mixed match of performance. Give them something what they can control and something they can focus on. And then that's your line in the sand, and that's your diagnostic then to go, right, if that moves, that's where I've got a problem, where I need to invest some time in development, rather than kind of a scattergun approach to 101 different metrics that we just can't focus on at any one given time. So less is more. To Ben's point, find your North Star, but find the thing that's going to drive value to reach that. Because if you're measuring something, targeting someone, performance managing on something that does add no value to delivering your strategic goal, then why are you doing it? You're just wasting everybody's time.
Yeah, we'll add to that. One of the biggest problems I see in contact centers is we run these 200 reports. No, you don't. No one's looking at them.
Oh.
Go back down, but boil it down to simpler metrics. And your priorities can change. This is the other thing they get wrong. They go, well, this is what we measure. No, this is what you measure this quarter. You can change it next quarter. So we're going to focus on what matters this quarter. We're going to set out what we'll achieve. Once we've achieved it, we're going to monitor that. And now we're going to prioritize this. And what happens in contact centers is they do that, keep that as a priority, add. And it gets to the point where you go, there's just that much. No one's actually, one, understanding it, and two, looking at it, because there's too many to look at. So focus on what matters, measure what matters, and don't be afraid of changing what that is.
Great.
I think most businesses are guilty of that as well, to be honest.
Yes, I agree. Constantly
Great.
review.
Oh, sorry, Chris, have you got
I'll just say,
something to say?
constantly review. Don't get stuck in just that one direction. It's the things change. It's the biggest mistake we make.
Great. And on that note, we've hit 3 o'clock, so I will call it a day for today. I'd like to say as well, for anyone that wants to sort of see the full report, I will be sending out a follow-up email after the webinar with the full benchmark report for anyone that wants to have a look at those statistics and the rest of the report in further detail. So thanks everyone for joining today, and also thanks to Ben and Chris on our panel. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Thanks very much, Brooke. Cheers, Ben. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks everybody.
Bye.